For the second set of instructional videos in tonight's episode, let us help you understand the complexities of science in our Tele-Turuan.
Good Delta Alpha Yankee. In short, good day. This is Menard F. Miguel from Cabanatuan City Senior High School, and I am your teacher presenter for Tele-Turuan. In the previous lesson, you've learned about how organisms change over time. Today, I will guide you about the classification of organisms based on evolutionary relationships. For us to understand more our lesson, let me first give you the objective of this discussion. And so at the end of the lesson, you are expected to describe how the present system of classification of organisms is based on evolutionary relationships. The diversity of living organisms on Earth is truly astounding, almost overwhelming. Humans have come up with ways of organizing or classifying biological diversity throughout human history. Organisms can be classified according to any number of criteria, including overall similarities, colors, ecological functions, and so on. However, it is generally agreed that the most useful way for scientists to organize biological diversity is to group organisms according to shared evolutionary history. This way, the grouping not only results in an organized classification, it also contains and conveys information about our understanding of the evolutionary history of these groups. In scientific terms, the evolutionary history and relationship of an organism or group of organisms are called phylogeny. Phylogeny describes the relationships of an organism, such as from which species it is most closely related and which organisms it is thought to be have evolved. It also provides information on shared ancestry, but not necessarily on how organisms are similar or different. Therefore, phylogeny is a study of determining evolutionary relationships or patterns of the descent of an organism. Through evolution, or simply change over time, all of the species of organisms that are alive today have descended from ancestral species. The evolutionary relationships of ancestral species and their descendants can be diagrammed using branching evolutionary trees. An evolutionary tree indicates which ancestors gave rise to which descendants, just like making a family tree. Traditionally, biological classification schemes included the idea of ranks, such as species, genus, family, order, class, and so on. In this system, or the Linnaean system, for example, there is a class Reptilia and a class Aves. However, the bulk of evidence supports, and the majority of scientists now agree, that the group Aves belongs within the larger group Reptilia, or the birds, share a most recent common ancestor with crocodiles, which are generally included in the class Reptilia. Within a traditional Linnaean system of classification, this means that either the class Aves is demoted to something below a class, or that a class Aves exists within another class Reptilia. Problems such as this have prompted many scientists to propose that a system of naming and classification of biological diversity be rank-free. Classification systems then only indicate the hierarchical structure of groups according to the current understanding of their evolutionary history, leaving out rank labels. Modern classification is based on evolutionary relationships called systematic or cladistics. Cladistics is a classification based on common ancestry. Phylogeny is the evolutionary history for a group of species, evidence from species, the fossil record, and molecular data shown with branching tree diagram. But what is a cladogram? A cladogram is a diagram that describes evolutionary relationships among groups. It is based on phylogeny, which is the study of evolutionary relationships. Sometimes, a phylogenetic tree is also called cladogram, though there are minor differences between the two. Biologists would group organisms based on their physical appearance. This strategy is called evolutionary classification cladistics through the advances in genetics and biochemistry. This form of analysis, which newer features that serve some kind of purpose and features organisms that are considered innovation. This illustration is an example of cladogram. It describes evolutionary relationship among group of species. You have to take note that the important factor that the organisms in the clade are monophyletic group stem from a single point on the tree is through varying the size of a clade depending on which branch point is being referenced. The term monophyletic breaks into mono, meaning one, and phyletic, meaning evolutionary relationship. Remember, it is necessary to classify organisms because it helps in the identification of living organisms, as well as in understanding the diversity of living organisms. Classification helps us to learn about different kinds of plants and animals, their features, similarities, and differences. With that, thank you so much. Again, this is Menard F. Miguel from Cabanatuan City Senior High School. Goodbye, God bless, and good day. Good day to our dear televiewers and subscribers. I am Menard F. Miguel from Cabanatuan City Senior High School, and I am your teacher presenter for Tele-Turuan. In the previous lesson, we've discussed the classification of organisms based on evolutionary relationships. Today, we will focus on different biotic potential and environmental resistance that affect population explosion. For us to understand more our lesson, let me first give you the objective of this discussion. At the end of the lesson, you are expected to explain the different biotic potential and environmental resistance that affect population explosion. Have you ever heard the expression that some efforts are like trying to push a boulder uphill? In biology, environmental resistance is a little bit like the hill, and the boulder is a population of organisms. If you were trying to push a boulder on a flat ground or downhill, it would be much easier. Same with pushing a pebble or piece of gravel uphill. It would be no big deal. But a boulder going uphill is a different story. Environmental resistance factors are all the things that keep a population of organisms from endlessly increasing. They lower the chances for reproduction, affect the health of organisms, and raise the death rate in the population. Environmental resistance factors include factors that are biotic, or the living, and abiotic, which are non-living. Biotic factors are things like predation, parasitism, lack of food, competition with other organisms, and disease. Abiotic factors include drought, fire, temperature, and even the wrong amount of sunshine. You can see how all these things, biotic and abiotic, would become an uphill battle to your boulder pushing. Environmental resistance acts like a heel pushing back against population growth. Biotic potential is what urges a population to grow. Biotic potential has something to do with how well a species can survive, including how well adaptable it is to the environment and its rate of reproduction. Some species produce a lot of young very often, while others produce fewer babies less often, but invest a lot of energy raising and protecting them. So, while the biotic potential of a species causes the population to increase, environmental resistance keeps it from increasing relentlessly. When the population is small, environmental resistance factors are not as big of a factor. There may be plenty of resources around so the population can keep growing quickly. It is kind of like pushing a piece of gravel uphill rather than a boulder. But as competition gets steeper and resources starts to become limited, population growth starts to slow. The rate of population growth is dependent on biotic potential and environmental resistance. Biotic potential measures how well a species has adapted to survive by defense mechanisms, resistance to adverse conditions, migration, and seed dispersion. While on the other hand, environmental resistance is adverse biotic and abiotic factors that trace the death of population. Example, predators, parasites, unfavorable temperature, and lack of water. The combination of the biotic and abiotic factors determines the carrying capacity of an ecosystem. Carrying capacity is the optimal maximum density of a population that can be supported by a defined space. If the population approaches or exceeds the carrying capacity, competition for resources will set limits to the population density. Population explosion is a result when all conditions favorable to the population occurs for an extended period of time. This time, let us talk about distribution or dispersal. Distribution or dispersal is the pattern of spacing among individuals of the population. There are three types. The first one is all about clumped dispersion. Clump dispersion is an individual aggregate in patches that may be influenced by resource availability and behavior, like efficiency in hunting and guarding the young. Second is all about uniform dispersion. Individuals are evenly distributed here. It may be influenced by social interactions such as territoriality. And third is the random dispersion. The location of one individual is independent of other members of the population. Let us have the population size and density. Population size is the number of individuals in a population. Population size influences the chances of a species surviving or going extinct. Generally, very small populations are at greatest risk of extinction. Population density is the average number of individuals in a population per unit of area or volume. Population density is not static. It is influenced by death, birth, and movement, like immigration and emigration among populations. Population growth is due to a higher birth rate than death rate. New individuals are recruited into the population through growth and immigration. Populations are regulated by, first, we have density-dependent regulation, in which the population growth rates are regulated by the density of a population. Most density-dependent factors are biological or biotic in nature and includes predation, inter- and intraspecific competition, accumulation of waste, and diseases such as those caused by parasites. Usually, the denser a population is, the greater its mortality. We also have density-dependent regulation in terms of competition for resources. Increasing population density intensifies competition for nutrients and other resources, reducing reproductive rates. Second, we have predation. Predation can be an important cause of density-dependent mortality. If a predator captures more food as the population density of the prey increases, as the prey population builds out, predators may also feed preferentially on the species. Predator-prey relationship of some animals, like the snowshoe, hare, and the lynx demonstrate a cyclic pattern. Third is territoriality. Territoriality can limit population density when space becomes the resource for which individuals compete. Cheetahs use a chemical marker in urine to warn other cheetahs of their territorial boundaries. The presence of surplus or non-breeding individuals is a good indication that territoriality is restricting population growth. Fourth is disease. If the transmission rate of a disease increases as population becomes more crowded, then the disease impact is density dependent. In humans, the respiratory diseases influenza or flu and tuberculosis are spread through the air when an infected person sneezes or coughs. Both diseases strike a greater percentage of people in densely populated cities than in rural areas. Then, we also have density-independent regulation. These are the factors that are typically physical or chemical or abiotic in nature that influence the mortality of a population regardless of its density. They include weather, natural disaster, such as storms, forest fires, flooding, pollution, and others. Example, a bird may be killed during an oil spill, regardless of how many birds were present in that area. Its chances of survival are the same, whether the population density is high or low. With that, thank you so much. Again, this is Menard F. Miguel from Cabanatuan City Senior High School. Goodbye everyone and God bless.
Isa na namang edisyon ng DepEd Hour ang inyong natunghayan. Sa ngalan po ng tanggapang panunsod sa pamumuno ni Mayor Micah Vergara, sa tagapamanihala ng mga paaralang lungsod, Teresa Mababa, sa taga-Masid Pansangay Glenn Agustin, kasama si Henry Pawig at ang buong pwersa ng CAV TV at DWWJ, ako po si Noel Ave Samson. Nawa ay sumaating lahat ang mapayapa at ligtas na gabi. Remember, never let your guards down.